In a landmark 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court struck down the Trump-era tariffs, unraveling a trillion-dollar policy that reshaped global trade. The ruling dismantles a key pillar of the America First agenda, forcing a major re-evaluation of presidential power over international commerce. For Americans, this means potential relief at the checkout line and a shift in the job market, as industries brace for new competition and opportunity. On October 1, 2025, the rules of global trade were rewritten. Echoes of this decision will be felt for a generation. To truly understand the impact of today's events, we need to rewind the clock to 2018, a year that marked a turning point in U.S. trade policy and global economic relations. That year, the Trump administration invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, a Cold War-era law originally designed to protect national security during emergencies. For decades, this law sat mostly unused, a relic of a different era, until it was suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Section 232 became the legal foundation for sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a vast array of Chinese goods. What was once a rarely used provision now became the centerpiece of a new, aggressive trade strategy, affecting industries across the globe. Even close allies like Canada and the European Union were not spared. They faced unexpected tariffs, sparking outrage and a wave of retaliatory measures. Iconic American products, motorcycles, bourbon, and more, became targets in a growing tit-for-tat. The trade war quickly escalated. China and the US exchanged blow after blow, imposing tariffs that sent shockwaves through global supply chains. Businesses scrambled to adapt, and uncertainty gripped markets worldwide. Tariffs made imported goods more expensive, and those higher costs were passed down the line. American consumers soon felt the pinch, paying more for cars, appliances, and even basic construction materials. Everyday life became noticeably pricier. While some U.S. steel and aluminum producers saw short-term gains and increased production, the broader economy suffered. Small businesses struggled with rising costs, and many industries faced disrupted trade and shrinking profits. The reach of these policies was unprecedented, touching nearly every corner of the economy. The pain was widespread, with ripple effects that lasted for years and changed the way America did business with the world. Now, with today's Supreme Court ruling, that turbulent era is finally coming to a close, marking a new chapter in the ongoing story of American trade policy. The legal fight began in 2018, when a group of determined steel importers decided to take a stand against what they saw as unchecked presidential power. These importers challenged the president's sweeping authority under Section 232, a law that allowed the executive branch to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports in the name of national security. In the lower courts, judges sided with the government, relying on decades-old legal precedent and a tradition of deferring to the executive branch, especially when national security was invoked. The courts argued that the president had broad discretion to act in the country's best interest. But the Supreme Court's decision to hear the case marked a turning point. It signaled that the justices were willing to reconsider the boundaries of presidential trade authority, and perhaps even challenge the status quo. During the high-stakes oral arguments, the plaintiffs passionately argued that Congress had effectively handed over its core constitutional responsibility, regulating commerce, without setting clear limits. They warned that the vague concept of national security had become a loophole, allowing the president to bypass Congress at will. This argument struck a chord with several justices, especially as industries from autos to agriculture described the real-world impact of the tariffs. Farmers, manufacturers, and small business owners all testified to the economic harm they faced: higher costs, shrinking profits, and uncertainty about the future. Friend of the court briefs from economists, trade groups, and policy experts painted a vivid picture of the consequences: higher costs for American companies, lost jobs in key industries, and a diminished ability to compete on the global stage. Communities across the country felt the ripple effects, from shuttered factories to struggling farms. The stage was set for a landmark decision, one that would test the very boundaries of executive power and redefine the relationship between the branches of government. The outcome would not only affect trade policy, but also the fundamental structure of American government, raising questions about checks and balances and the separation of powers. The stakes were enormous. Who truly controls the nation's economic destiny? Congress, with its constitutional authority, or the president, wielding executive power? The answer would not just determine the future of U.S. trade policy, but could reshape the balance of power in Washington for years to come. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the majority, declared that Congress cannot hand the president a blank check on trade. The court found national security too vague a standard, overturning decades of precedent and restoring Congress's constitutional authority over commerce. The dissent warned the court was overstepping, but the majority insisted unchecked executive power was never the framers' intent. All Section 232 tariffs were invalidated, and the Treasury was ordered to halt collections and begin refunding duties. The ruling also casts doubt on other broad trade powers, hinting at more legal battles ahead. The message: Congress must set clear limits if it wants to delegate such authority. The era of unilateral tariff power is over. The decision's impact will be felt in American wallets, touching nearly every aspect of daily life. Whether you're shopping for groceries, paying your utility bills, or planning a big purchase, the effects will ripple through your budget. Tariffs acted as a hidden tax, quietly raising prices on everything from cars to canned goods. Shoppers noticed their dollars didn't stretch as far, and families had to make tough choices at the checkout line or postpone buying a new vehicle. Now, with tariffs gone, import costs are expected to fall. Economists predict a gradual easing of inflation over the next year, which could mean lower prices on everyday items and a bit more breathing room for household budgets. Automakers and manufacturers will see lower input costs, which should help stabilize or even reduce prices for consumers. This could make American-made products more competitive and affordable, benefiting both buyers and businesses. But for U.S. steel and aluminum producers, the loss of protection means renewed global competition and uncertainty for workers. Some may worry about job security as foreign metals become cheaper and more available. Farmers, battered by retaliatory tariffs, see hope for restored export markets and a return to trade over government aid. For many in rural America, this could mean a much-needed boost after years of uncertainty and lost income. The central tension remains. Protecting some industries often means higher costs for others. Balancing these interests is never easy, and every policy shift creates new winners and losers. The ruling promises relief for many, but not all. While some will feel immediate benefits, others may face new challenges and uncertainties as the economy adjusts. The trade war's winners and losers are about to be reshuffled, with businesses and workers across the country watching closely to see where they'll land in this new landscape. For households and businesses alike, the effects will be real, and soon. Every American will feel these changes, whether in the checkout aisle, the workplace, or around the kitchen table. The ruling has upended Washington's political calculus. The administration faces pressure to support workers while mending ties with allies and consumers. For Republicans, it's a blow to economic nationalism, fueling debate between protectionists and free traders. Congress, long sidelined, now regains the power and responsibility to write America's trade laws. Lawmakers must build consensus and craft new rules, no longer able to defer to the White House. Expect fierce lobbying, shifting alliances, and a renewed focus on constitutional checks and balances. The center of gravity on trade has shifted back to Capitol Hill. The next chapter in U.S. trade policy will be written in Congress, not the Oval Office. The world's response was swift. Relief in allied capitals, cautious optimism in Beijing. Allies welcomed the end of tariffs, the promise of renewed cooperation. China, wary but hopeful, sees a chance for dialogue, though deeper disputes remain unresolved. The ruling boosts the World Trade Organization, signals a U.S. return to multilateralism. Global businesses anticipate more stable supply chains, predictable trade rules. The decision removes a layer of uncertainty, encouraging investment, long-term planning. The hope: an end to tit-for-tat trade wars, a new era of collaboration. The U.S. is poised to lead by example if it seizes the opportunity. The world is watching America's next move. Legal scholars call this one of the most significant separation of powers rulings in decades. The court's message: Congress can't delegate away its core responsibilities, especially on trade. Economists see the decision as a chance to move beyond protectionism and invest in innovation and competitiveness. Critics warn that without tariffs, U.S. industries face tough global competition and risk losing ground to subsidized rivals. The consensus: Congress must act, crafting new, constitutionally sound tools to address unfair trade practices. The ruling creates a power vacuum. Will lawmakers restrict presidential authority or redefine it with clearer limits? The future of American trade policy is now in legislative hands. The era of relying on outdated laws is over. The next steps will shape the nation's economic strategy for years to come. The world and American workers are waiting for answers. The Supreme Court's decision closes a turbulent chapter and opens a new debate. What is America's role in the global economy? The age of sweeping, unilateral tariffs is over. The path forward demands law, strategy, and vision. Congress must now craft a modern trade framework, one that protects workers, fosters innovation, and upholds open markets. The executive branch needs clear guardrails to respond to real threats, without overreach. For citizens, this is a call to engage. Trade policy shapes our jobs, communities, and future. The court has handed the nation a reset. Let's seize the chance to lead, not retreat. America's next era in global trade begins now.